What is going on, everyone? It is Tyler McKinney, and we finally have football to talk about. We are going to go ahead and we are going to give just kind of quick reactions of the first two XFL games. If it's your first time here, hey, glad to have you. If you're a return viewer, thanks for coming back and thanks for watching more videos. And if you haven't yet, please consider subscribing. All right, let's not waste any more time. Let's go ahead and let's get into it. Let's start off with just an overview of everything. I loved it. I thought it was great. It was football. It was exciting. It was fast-paced. It didn't take too long. I didn't feel like I was sitting there waiting for something to happen. I didn't feel like it was a Saturday night, prime time college football game, and I'm sitting waiting through commercial after commercial after commercial. And then they score a touchdown. Then they go to commercial. Then they do a kickoff. Then they go to commercial. We didn't have that. We got to see what was going on the field. Was it perfect? Absolutely not. But overall, it was a fantastic experience. I loved just sitting there and watching the games, taking it all in. It was legit football. It was professional football. It looked good. The presentation wasn't necessarily the best that I've seen, but it wasn't bad at all. I mean, it still looked big-time football. It was really great. The first game we got, the crowd was electric. You could hear them. It was fantastic. You could definitely tell that they were into the game. It was a perfect day for football in D.C. Everything fell right for the XFL on this first day. And just from the atmosphere, the way that the announcers were, and the way that the different both Fox and ESPN, ABC, the way that they covered it, they didn't cover it as necessarily like little brother. They covered it and really gave it respect, and gave these players respect, and gave the XFL the respect really that they deserve for the hard work that they put in, and didn't belittle them by pushing them down as this little brother thing. I think that they did a really nice job. There's a fine line there between labeling yourself as a minor league and also labeling yourself as, listen, we understand we are not the NFL. We're not where they're at, but we think we've got a good product. And boy, do they have a good product. It was fun to watch. It was really good. It was entertaining. Both games were really neat. So let's go ahead and let's nitpick here, all right? So overall, I think they did a fantastic job. I thought that the presentation went really well. I thought that things were really good. Now, some of the angles and the way that some of the stuff was shot, it was a little difficult at first, especially with the ABC, ESPN thing. Some of the angles that they went to during the game, I wasn't necessarily, kind of a big fan of. I would have liked a little bit more traditional style, but that's me nitpicking. It didn't take me out of the game or take me out of the experience. One of the things that was tough and it seemed. They seemed to start to figure it out as they went, is that they kept giving us all of the stuff with, the offensive coordinators calling things and, them, all the coaches talk and everything. What happened, though, is the play-by-play then was talking over them. So we had both mics going at the same time, and sometimes it was difficult to hear. And so I really wasn't a big fan of that. That did pull me out of the game sometimes, because I was like, wait, what are they saying? Who's saying what? And, especially when the coaches are calling these plays out, and there are a lot of weird names and things put together, and then when you hear that with the in-between of the play-by-play, it's a little jarring sometimes. Granted, it didn't take away from the experience for me. It just at times pulled me away. Now, they kind of figured it out. They kind of found a balance, and I thought that was cool too. The other thing is that they brought us along throughout the game. They let us know as the fan what's going on, the differences here, but also accentuating, where they're making the changes and the differences with it. And so I thought that was fantastic, and it was in a way that it wasn't necessarily having to stop everything to tell you what's going on. No, they just kind of let it happen and explained it as it was going, and as the game moved on, and it felt natural. It felt good. You could definitely tell that they were getting used to putting a mic in people's faces, but the players were genuine about it. I really like the experience, that we got, just the off the cuff stuff from them. I thought that was a really neat thing that they did there. I really, really liked that. And, all in all, the games kind of played out as I would have expected them, both to go. And, for me, I'm feeling pretty good. The worst that I can do right now is 500. So, I'm feeling pretty good picking against the spread so far this season. But let's go ahead now and, I want to shift gears a little bit and let's talk about the game within the game, okay? And let's talk about the actual games. So let's get into them. The first game was the DC Defenders and the Seattle Dragons, and this was a fun game. It was a game kind of like I figured up into the third quarter, and then, DC really took over, and it really just it showed to me, Seattle's going to have a tough time on their hands because Brandon Silvers looked good in places. However, when you throw a couple picks in crucial, now granted, I know one of them might not have been his fault with him falling down and that with it. He just, as the game got bigger and bigger and bigger, he seemed to get less and less and less. And the defense started to figure him out. Granted, that defense, they are stout. That defensive backfield is legit. Campbell, that boy can play, and there's a reason why they spent the first-round draft pick on him. He is going to be, unfortunately, on an NFL team come this fall. He played lights out. He was great, fantastic. Defensive line looked stout, looked good, with that. Overall, though, I really liked it. So the AAF, when they started, and again, the AAF is all that we have to go off of. So that's what I'm comparing it to. And it was much better than the AAF. That first AAF game to watch, I watched it. I was excited for it. And even somebody who was excited for something new, wanting something new, watching it, it was hard to watch. The offenses were terrible. These offenses were actually both fairly decent. When we went into this game, it didn't look like that this was a new league starting up. It looked like the first game of the season. You could see the jitters in everybody. You could see that the teams are figuring out who's going to be good, who's not, who's our go-to players, who's going to step up when they need to, those type of things. That's what we saw. It wasn't this thing to where, they didn't have things figured out for the game's sake. They were figuring out, how they were going to work as a team. And that's what you want to see. I never looked at the game and I felt like that the defense had this big advantage over the offense, and that's how I felt like with the AAF. And I think a lot of it we have to give credit to the quarterback play. And you can definitely tell that the XFL went out there and made sure that they got good quarterback play. Now, Brandon Silvers kind of fell off towards the end, and I think that probably next week you're going to see a lot more of BJ Daniels. I think that Daniels just gives this team possibly a little bit of a different spark that maybe they can use to their advantage. They tried to run the ball and they kind of did a little bit, but not, I think, to the effectiveness that they wanted to. And I'm just going to come out and say that Austin Proehl, he is a stud. And he's going to be one of those guys that if you're looking for a guy that's kind of been lower on the radar for your fantasy leagues, especially those of you guys out there who are going to be starting fantasy leagues maybe a little later, because you've been waiting for things to come out and things never came out. And so now you're going to go ahead and start it in week 2, which, listen, I think that you'll still have a great season if you start it in week 2. But Austin Proehl is going to be he's going to be a stud in this league. His touchdown run is really, touchdown catch and run is really kind of, all you really need to see of him. I think he did a fantastic job. And yeah, he's going to be a great asset for this team, and especially if they put in Daniels, where Daniels a little bit more mobile, and if he can move around in the pocket, Prohl's a guy that kind of finds that space to where he can really shine there, and so I think that would be good for them going forward. I think they got some really nice pieces there. They just the wheels fell off towards the end, and it showed that DC was definitely the better team. They had more firepower. Their defense once they figured out how that Seattle offense was doing, made some adjustments. They pretty much shut them down towards as the game went on. Now DC. DC looks legit, and Cardale Jones is running that offense like a smooth, well-oiled machine. Perrell, they got him involved a lot, and I think he's an explosive type of guy. But man, I really like Presley's running, and I know he didn't really the stats really didn't show it. But man, he ran hard. I think earlier on in his first few runs, they weren't really figuring out what they were doing. But once they got going, I thought it was good. Cardale threw the ball well. He had some sometimes, that things got a little shaky in that, but once they figured it out, they've got a decent, receiving core in that with it. We talked about Ross not starting, but Ross was a huge part of their game plan, and they used him well. And I think you're going to see more and more of him. Rogers and Cobbs, I thought that they all did well, and they utilized kind of that whole 2 forward pass thing. Now, granted, it was like some laterals back, and they did that trick play where Cardale Jones hit the tight end deep down the field. I think it was Lee. Looked good. Team looks stout, and yeah, all in all, it was a very good game. It kept you entertained the whole time. You were in the game. You enjoyed it. It was an enjoyable experience. You could tell that the people there were enjoying it. They almost had 20,000 people there. They had 17,000 in attendance, and that's a small stadium. So, they had majority of that place packed, and so it was a cool atmosphere there. So if you guys got to go, any of you guys got to go to the game, I'm sure you guys had a fantastic time, and it was a fun game for you guys. All in all, it was a great way to start it. It looked fantastic. ESPN did a fantastic job with putting it together. Up in the booth, McElroy, I thought he and Levy did a great job, and they're talking about what they loved about the game, and it was genuine. It wasn't none of this stuff seemed forced. When they were talking about the innovations of the game and what they're doing with the game and the changes that they've made to the game, you could definitely tell that when they talked about it, it made sense. It wasn't like that they were trying to get those little points in there, right? That, the XFL and ESPN had talking points for them to say, and they had to make sure to fit those in somehow. No, it was just natural, and you could tell that, they felt that way. Now, again, they're going to have to figure out the whole kind of sideline reporter thing. That was a little bit jarring sometimes, and you can tell that they were running around and, and kind of weird little thing. But, all in all, first game was fantastic. Second game, I was already pumped for the first game. And the second game, we got, right off the bat, we got electricity. Boom, PJ Walker hits a guy, 50-yard touchdown, and, I'm like, we're off to the races here, and that with it. And then things slowed down, which was fine. And we were figuring out, I'll tell you one of the things that was crazy is early on, I think like Knuff was like 5 for 6 or something, and like 3 of those passes were like tipped. So it was like crazy. Like he had this weird juju mojo that was going his way early on, and again, Houston's defense kind of figured them out, and once they did and clamped down, I think they found Knuff and that offense they really Sproul is an excellent possession wide receiver. He seems to find holes everywhere. This guy's a stud. He's going to be playing. He's going to be on some NFL team come fall. They're going to see what he did here. They're really you can't coach that. And guys that have sixth senses just to find holes in defenses, they're worth their weight in gold. And they just always seem to be able to come up with the ball. So he's going to definitely find himself on some squad, and he's definitely going to, if you want a wide receiver, the guy had 10 catches and over 100 yards catching from a backup and third string quarterback. That's big. So just think of when Josh Johnson gets back, just how well they'll be able to utilize him. But yeah, he was standout for me. Hood ran hard. They just never got things running and going with it, and a lot of it I think had to do. They had Knuff in there, and Knuff. You could definitely tell he was pushing things, especially there when he really got excitable there in the second half, especially when Houston was starting to pull away on them. So, LA, they kind of ended up being what I kind of thought they would. Come out with a lot of moxie, punching, throwing punches hard, and when they got jacked in the jaw, it didn't feel good, and they didn't come back. Whereas Houston, they got jacked in the jaw by the Wildcats, and they took it in stride. Changed up, made some adjustments. They changed from they were running kind of a zone defense, switched up to running more man, and really called Knuff's bluff there. And his kind of lucky streak, his 4-leaf clover was kind of gone then, and they took advantage of it. And looking at he didn't necessarily have bad numbers. He just didn't look great towards the end. He started off really well and then was not good at the end. And granted, they had to throw to try to get back in the game, so they kind of knew what they were doing. That Houston front line on the defense is stout. They looked really, really good. Those guys, they're going to be creating some mayhem in some backfields this season, and I think it's going to be fun to watch. As I look at all four of these teams, though, the offensive lines didn't necessarily look bad. Whereas the AAF, I'm watching that especially the first few weeks, and they can't do anything against these defenses. These defenses were looking like world beaters, and they weren't able to do anything. Partly the offensive lines weren't giving them any time. There's definitely that with the quarterbacks. But the other thing is the quarterback play. Knuff would have been, a really good quarterback in the AAF. He would have been probably one of the better ones. And in all reality, I think as we look at things, he's going to end up being, of the quarterbacks that get to play, one of, the ones on the lower end of the scale of things. So, I go hats off to the XFL for finding good quarterbacks and good quarterback play. And speaking of good quarterbacks, P.J. Walker, the man came out and put on a clinic. I mean, let's look at this here real quick. 272 yards. Now, granted, he had the one pick where he tried to, towards the end of the game, kind of tried to seal things off with another touchdown, try to get that fifth touchdown, ended up with 4 touchdowns. And threw that pick right there in the end zone, which kind of ended his really good game. But looked really good, looked solid. He was very elusive, figured out how to run the ball. Now, granted, he took way too many hits. I'd have liked to seen him take less hits, but in the same regards, he did what he needed to do, and especially to lift his team up. And this team responded to that. And I was a little kind of taken back by a couple of things. One, Williams didn't get the ball as much as I thought he would have, the running back. And they ended up running with Butler a lot more. And Butler ran fairly decent, but it was like towards the end of the game. So they had Butler in there. I was like, why wouldn't you be running with Williams? So Butler must be kind of their bruiser, pounder guy that they're going to try to close out games with. And that's kind of what they did here. And so, yeah, and the wide receiving core looking really good and really stout. Phillips is a sleeper. If you got a fantasy team and he's open, go get him. He is. I think he's going to get the ball from Walker a lot this season. And another guy who's a sleeper is Holly. Holly's out there to ball. he's one of those Kent State guys, Edelman, that type of a thing. He's going to be, he's just going to play with just that chip on his shoulder and, be able to find ways to get open and make really good catches and put his body in, in a position to where it's about the catch and making the catch, and if he gets hit and hurt, he's going to get hit and hurt. And quarterbacks like the fact that they know they can throw to a guy that is going to go get the ball. And so you can definitely tell that P.J. Walker really likes throwing to Holly, likes throwing to Phillips. Now, I will say this, Sammy Coates, he struggled in this game, and he's got all the talent in the world. The problem is that he dropped way too many balls. He needs to catch those contested balls. He has that big frame, and he's very athletic. He needs to go get the ball. And I will say, to that degree, though, the refs, I think, let the defensive backs play way too much, especially early on. There were some egregious bad non-calls when it came to pass interference, especially for the LA Wildcats, and I think that's what kept them in the game earlier on, because they got some incompletions that should have been pass interference calls. There's like 3 or 4 of them in the first half that I think would have that kept them in the game and would have allowed Houston to continue on drives and probably run the score up more to where they would be more like in the 50s as opposed to at 37. They just once Houston got the lead and started doing it, the wheels fell off for the Wildcats, and you kind of saw that they need Josh Johnson back. He's definitely going to be that cog that's going to get their offensive rolling, and I think then that'll get the running game more involved in it, and so LA, I don't think that they're done, but whatever's going on with his thigh, they need to get that figured out. PJ Walker, like I said in my predictions and in my picks video, he's going to look like a stud in this league, and he already does, threw for 4 touchdowns, and I think he's just going to rack up the stacks this season. He's probably going to be your front runner for the MVP, depending upon what happens with Philip Nelson tomorrow. I think all in all, it was a fantastic experience. I enjoyed it a lot. I had a good time with it. Let's see here. Am I missing anything else? It was good football. It looked like football. The offensive lines, I thought, did a really good job. Quarterbacks got the ball out quick. You saw the offensive lines giving them pockets to pass in. It looked like football. It worked like football. I didn't feel like the rules, were anything that I had to take a step back and figure out, okay, well, this is this again. No, it was nice. I like the 1 foot rule. It's easy. I like also too the fact that we got to see some of the inner workings of the football. The replays, how they're figuring out the replays. I like the fact that they didn't call that a legal hit. In the later game, the LA and Houston game, I like that. I liked how they looked at that type of stuff. So as I, kind of boil this all down, really good first day. Looking forward to our slate 2 of games on Sunday, and we'll do another quick reactions video to that. So yeah, guys, hopefully you enjoyed it. Hopefully it was fun to you, because it was fun to me, and we'll see you guys tomorrow. All right, well, you have a good night. You have a good night, and I'm definitely going to have a good night. And so let's get on out of here. Have a good one. Bye.